of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning, this is Arlene.
Hello, this is Gowri.
And of course, you are with us on our very beautiful morning, Tuesday morning of ASEAN Daily.
Mm-hmm. And we are here to bring everyone news from Southeast Asia.
Yes. But the thing is, it's kind of sad that we have two, I would say, it's not very positive breaking news from Southeast Asia. Of course, the number one would be the Indonesia plane crash, which they already found the debris, which was spotted on a mountain.
And these Indonesian searchers actually spotted the debris from the Indonesian airliner, which is Trigana Air Service, that crashed in a mountain with 54 people on board. Actually, and a ground team hasn't been able to reach it yet. And the fact that it happened in a village that's in a remote area, I think makes it difficult as well for the investigators to go there. But there has been reports by the villagers themselves that they saw the plane actually crashing into the mountain.
It's at eastern Papua province. It's quite remote. And also the weather is still questionable, forcing the search to halt yesterday's searching, because they want to wait for the weather to ease out a bit. And one thing that people are questioning, like, there's just so many disasters, like air disaster in Southeast Asia. Just by in less than 8 months, there's already the third air disaster, if you want to include the Indonesian plane crash carrying 54 people. And one of the things that we somehow are being informed that the Trigana Air Service, which is the plane, the plane service provider, is one of the a large number of airlines being banned from operating in the European airspace because they are found to be unsafe and not sufficiently overseen by the authorities.
I think there is actually a few air services back in Indonesia which actually doesn't meet the safety requirements of international flying standards, but for some reason they're still being allowed to operate. I remember being there a couple of years back, and a few of my European friends, I think when I was about to fly Lion Air, and they were like, "Oh, we're not coming with you." That the Lion Air does not meet the Europe safety guidelines. But I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go anyway." So, I'm glad that nothing happened to me. But now that a tragedy has happened, I think that there should be a regulation to actually monitor that they do meet the safety requirements, because it's a big deal. It's an airplane that actually goes up thousands of feet, and you carry a huge amount of people as well.
And especially with climate change, now we see more and more uncertain weather patterns. I think the airline industry, especially focusing on Southeast Asia, need to beef up their security services, their maintenance, and the way they operate as a whole, because there are also complaints about overworked pilots and supply not being able to fulfill demands, so they have to stretch out the time of flying for pilots. These are complaints that I think needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that overworked pilots, because we know that pilots are the most important people. And I think I was also reading the Air Asia interview once when this guy who's a pilot said that it's very, very important for the pilots to be well rested the night before a flight, because I guess even if you're a air stewardess or what, you can probably take a nap sometime, but when you're a pilot, you have to stay awake even though it's like a 18-hour flight, whatever it is. So it's important for them to actually be alert.
It's a very high risk job, I would say. And another thing that is in high risk, also not a very positive news, breaking news from Thailand, is a bomb blast that somehow killed 123 people, if I'm not mistaken, and injured at least 20 people on a deadly blast rock at the Thailand capital.
Right, and the national TV, of course, quoted the Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha as saying that the government would set up a war room to coordinate its response.
What is a war room? sounds awesome.
Yeah, sounds cool, but at the same time, it sounds pretty aggressive as well. But then again, it is a bomb blast, which is quite a serious issue.
So he's
as well.
putting on his military hat.
That's right.
Not the prime minister
Going
hat.
back to his military style and stop being the democratic wannabe.
You know,
prime
one thing.
minister.
I mean, I'm not. Okay, one thing I really like about military heads compared to like prime minister and others, those who come from the other backgrounds, is they are more strategic.
I thought you were gonna say they are more heroic.
Yeah, in a way they tend to be more macho and strategic. They are like, okay, now is like all hawkish policy. I need to wear my military hat and let's start a war room. Because I can bet you if it's President Obama or even our Najib administration, I don't think he will, the first comment that comes from him will be like, we will start a war room.
Well, yeah, I mean,
he'll be like, we will have some investigation done, we will come back to you with a report.
That's right.
That's the most that I can hear from.
Yeah, I mean, it's good in that in a way he's being very angry about this as well, because it's a bomb blast that kind of surprised everybody. It happened right in the middle of Bangkok, and like you were mentioning, about 20 people died and almost 100 others were injured. And it seems there are another 2 explosive devices that were also discovered in the area, but were managed to defused by the police just in time. And the whole situation was so chaotic, where people were running around just looking for shelter, trying to protect themselves, especially all the tourists who were there in Bangkok. I mean, imagine it's your first time in Bangkok and you're trying to have fun, and then this whole tragedy happens that could have easily threatened your life as well.
I wonder who. I think the biggest question is, is it done by local people, you know, by this lone crazy guy, or is it by an extremist group? Especially religious extremism is one thing that we do not want to hear,
of course,
in Southeast Asia. So I hope that the investigation will kick off and somehow find who is the person in charge of this bomb
so
blast.
far there's been no claim of responsibility, I think, but the National Council for Peace and Order has denied rumors that there will be a state of emergency in Bangkok.
Sorry, what's the name again?
Thailand's National Council for Peace and Order.
This one sounds like 1984.
Well, probably.
In 1984, there's a Minister of Love.
Oh, okay. So now
I
there's
just wanna
a
let you know.
Council for Peace and Order. But yeah, well, they said that they will not be declaring a state of emergency, but they will be assisting the police as well in investigation, like we were mentioning earlier. And I guess we have to wait and see what happens and who finally comes forward and says, hey, it was me.
Anyway, we'll take one short break. When we return, we'll go to the politics side of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, you're still with us. So, during the weekend was the celebration of Indonesia's
Independence
Day. And I kind of feel happy for Indonesia. They celebrate their 70th anniversary.
That's right,
It's like
70 years of independence. And I think the celebration was very, very grand as well in Indonesia. And they had their usual eating keropok ceremony and playing all those street games. And yeah, there were a lot of pictures circulating around the internet as well.
And I like that their theme is Ayo Kerja. And there's I mean, it's really good that they're using positive, action-oriented slogan to kind of remind people that, we made this country out of blood and sweat and tears.
That's funny
So
because when I saw it, it was like ayo kerja, like ayo. I mean, as a Malaysian, and then I realized that okay, ayo, because they spell it differently.
Yeah, they spell it differently.
Yes.
It's actually, the Malay word would be ayo,
Of course.
ayu-ish.
Yeah.
Which means let's work or let's do something.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the interesting news coming out from the Independence Day ceremony is, so Jokowi actually held a ceremonial gathering for Indonesians, and he invited mostly ordinary people. When I say ordinary people, it's not just you and me, Gowri. It's farmers. I don't know, people who really work on the ground, like
Right.
housewife, people who actually really contribute to what Indonesia we know today. Bakso seller, for example.
Right. And there were also fishermen, and he also invited people from the orphanage to participate, and where they distributed 1,000 invitations, and only 30% of those were actually for officials who were invited to the Independence Day at the palace. And I think this goes to show once again how people-oriented Jokowi has been projecting himself to be, and he's definitely living up to that expectation as well.
I mean, I can't help to think, like, any of us, whoever there is a Malaysian, maybe you can share with us if you ever got invited to Putrajaya or to the Agong's Palace to celebrate our 57th anniversary.
I don't recall such thing.
I was never invited.
Right.
I mean, I always pass by Jalan Duta and see the big, huge Agong Palace.
And you always want to go in, but
I wasn't even invited.
you're afraid you'll get kicked out. I think so. I mean, for an event at the palace, usually it's very tight security as well, and they're very particular about who goes in and out, and what's your reason for being here in the first place. When, if you were to look at it from the layman's point of view, like, hey, he's my king, and why can't I just go and visit the palace and
I
visit
think it would
him?
be great to actually hear stories in Malaysia where I mean, I don't know whether we still have, I think we do have farmers.
Oh, yeah.
Farmers, fishermen, the lady that sells nasi lemak on the street side, really
the LRT station.
or the guy at the LRT station checking counters, like really ordinary Malaysians being invited to such grand events, I think.
Oh, even you and me.
Yeah, as radio
we'll
DJ.
be happy to be there and to cover the event for them. So apparently Jokowi was there with his vice president as well, Yusuf Kala, along with former president Megawati Soekarno Putri, who was seen at the commemoration ceremony for Indonesia's proclamation of independence.
And it's her first time since 10 years.
That's right.
That she has attended such formal events.
And I think it's great that they are trying to be more people-oriented, which should be the way, because at the end of the day, it's just people who work really hard. And I mean, I'm not saying they are the only ones who work hard, but everyone should be included because they all play their part in driving the country forward. And it's good that everyone is being included in this invitation.
Yes, that's true. But at the same time, during Indonesia's Independence Day, apparently a jailed Papua activist rejected Indonesia's freedom offer.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because several times we actually talk about the issues in West Papua, but this jail West Papuan political activist really highlighted the reality of the people there in a way.
And it's very rare that when you are told that you could be free from the prison and you actually said, no, I'm going to stay in. I mean, he was actually given that offer because he had good behavior and they feel like, oh, okay, maybe you deserve a chance. But he said that he will only accept an unconditional release. So probably he doesn't want to go for parole, doesn't want to come back and report. And he's been serving a 15-year jail sentence already.
Wow, 15 years is a lot of time. time being jailed. And the only reason for him to do that is because he was charged for treason after he raised the banned Morning Star flag at a political rally in 2004. And I can totally understand where he's coming from, and I would agree with him.
Okay.
He wrote in an open letter that he did not commit a crime for raising the flag and will continue campaign for West Papuan independence.
And I think it seems this is not his first time as well to reject a clemency offer by Indonesia. And like you were mentioning, he believes that he did not commit any crime, and he's standing by that belief, that conviction that my cause is to actually campaign for West Papuan independence. So I don't want some cheap shot like, oh, okay, we can release you now and all, and then he feels grateful and forget about what it's really all about. So I think in this case, it's kind of admirable as well for someone to reject the offer of getting out of prison and saying, I'll stay on and I'll fight for what I believe in. And one of these offers even came during a visit to Papua province in the May by, of course, our President Joko Widodo.
Actually, there's a lot of news lately about President Joko Widodo really want to forge a greater relationship with the people in West Papua. Even recent as a couple of months ago, he has released quite a number of West Papuan political prisoners. I think he's on the West Papuan side. He really want to integrate the people in Indonesia as one. But at the same time, he's not the only decision maker in politics. He tried to release or to pardon 19 Papuan prisoners lately, but his I guess proposal was rejected by the House of Representatives.
And well, looking at that, like you were saying, he is trying his best to go to Papua and foster a good relationship with them. And he has released 5 political prisoners actually in the last couple of months. But it's a bit tricky because when it comes to Papua, they always feel like they are being ostracized by the other Indonesians, that they look different, their culture is different, and of course they are also situated.
I agree with you. I mean, I have friends
away
from Papua, and I agree with you that they look extremely different. In fact, they look much more Africano than the rest of Southeast Asia.
And a very tribal way of living as well.
But at the same time, I feel like if they are given enough freedom, they do want to stay in Indonesia. But they do want to have some form of what do you call it? Self-governance, but you still being part of Indonesia. Like the one in Aceh right now, which is the next news. So Indonesia's Aceh is one of the best example where you can self-govern yourself, but at the same time you're still part of a larger community in Indonesia. And Indonesia's Aceh success is actually, success for peace is actually something that Philippines Mindanao wants to emulate.
Right, and the Philippines government is hoping for a similar ending with the separatists in the Mindanao region, which has been causing quite a stir as well, with all the separatist groups coming up and making demands and I would say causing tension as well in the Philippines. And and of course this comes in line with last Saturday when Aceh actually marked 10th year of anniversary of peace agreement signed between the separatists and the Indonesian government. So this is what Philippines is also hoping to achieve with the separatists in Mindanao, who are fighting for Mindanao to become a separate region by itself.
They are selling this idea, not really idea, actually it's more like an agreement. It's called the Bangsa Moro Basic Law Peace Deal. And I'm quite admirably, I really admire the way the Filipinos trying to sell all out on the Bangsa Moro Basic Law. I was in Manila looking through the newspaper, and they actually publish it, the whole law in the newspaper, and I thought it is great. When is the last time you actually see a whole piece of law being published in the newspaper just to educate you about things that would happen for different communities to live together.
And some of the other things that they're doing is also to get more people from the Mindanao to attend some training so they can also get into government positions, and this could probably also help to for the betterment of the relationship between the two. And they're also coming up with an economic plan beforehand, that they're already training people to run political parties ahead of time.
Remember from MILF?
Right, of course, MILF.
Or the Moro
Islamic Liberation Front. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Have been actively participating in the political decision making, especially in training and also preparing themselves into governmental position, because you cannot be a separatist group forever, right? If you want to be part of Mindanao's and also for the Philippines as a whole in terms of governance.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we do know that Mindanao is, still part of the Philippines, and people there are still Filipinos. And as much as you want to be by yourself, like going back to Aceh, it is possible to actually self-govern and also be under the federal government itself. So hopefully they try and work something out and achieve an agreement, because it is doable.
So talking about working together, the next news is also something that ASEAN needs to learn, which is how to work with China.
Again.
They are searching for a new model to work together, especially in the case of South China Sea, because so many types of model have been explored, and it seems like it's still not quite running smoothly in terms of the communication, the decision making, and just getting people on the same page on the South China Sea. So for weeks, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has painstakingly explained the position of China on South China Sea dispute, and the recent progress in drafting the code of conduct for the area with ASEAN.
And he also emphasized over and over again that the priority in China is actually peripheral diplomacy, and Beijing will continue to support ASEAN because it is the first sub-regional community, and it's because of also China's predominant role in East Asia. And of course, he also mentioned a few challenges that's been faced by China as well, in terms of production capacity, cooperation, boosting connectivity, and of course the most important one, which is deepening maritime cooperation with ASEAN. And it seems that as much as China also wants to resolve the issue, we have yet to come to a common ground where both sides can agree on working together.
There are several, suggestion. I think one of the more interesting suggestion coming from President Joko Widodo, which we had reported earlier, Indonesia offering to facilitate China's accession to the South China Sea. From Jakarta's point of view, this would be an immediate step to reduce the trust deficit with China. And I totally agree with Jokowi on this.
Indonesia is, of course, stepping in and trying to facilitate this whole process. But I don't know if it actually will help for them, for Jokowi to say that it will be an immediate step to reducing the trust deficits, because I think China definitely has its own importance when it comes to the region, and the fact that they keep expanding anyway, although there's already been tension with a couple of countries in Southeast Asia. And as much as they want to come up with a framework, and I think there's also been a few terms, they call it the Treaty of Good Neighborliness, Friendship and Cooperation, and they've also suggested...
I like the word good neighborliness.
Exactly. And they've also started setting up a working group to discuss this proposal, but it seems that ASEAN's foreign ministers have tasked Indonesia to actually put this whole thing together and facilitate the ongoing discussion.
Now they are looking at just focusing more on track 2 diplomacy, which is more forums, more engagement, informal engagement, and trying to just explore different ways of trying to resolve the issue. So for countries to just quickly say, merely say, oh, we need a code of conduct. I think that kind of diplomacy might not work right now because it's too harsh or too cold. So focusing on track 2 diplomacy would be which is a more informal way of interaction. I think would be the best way forward, at least for now. And I think they should also consider Jokowi's offer on this.
But what would actually be the best way to do it? Would it be on a bilateral basis? Would it be the code of conduct, or the best way is to actually to get whole of ASEAN come together and sign an agreement with China?
Well, that's the thing. I think the ultimate goal is to have a code of conduct, because for any maritime dispute, you need a law for it, so that you know what's your take on it and my take on it. But the problem is, for China to be able to talk about code of conduct, you need to convince them in a way that that ASEAN can be trusted, that it is not being infiltrated by any proxy power. So this is the tricky part, because neighboring countries like India, the US, Australia, South Korea, Japan and all, they do have interest in South China Sea, and that's the concern of China as a whole. So anyway, we'll take one short break, Gowri.
Yeah.
When we return, we'll talk more on dollars and cents plus socio-cultural.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, good morning. This is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
So talking about economy, right? China is expanding worldwide, but only in terms of dollar and cents, not in terms of culture.
That's
because
right.
Chinese companies actually are facing culture shock in countries that aren't like China.
I'm not surprised actually, because China is pretty huge. I would assume that they would have culture shock even in other parts of China, like say from the far north when you go to the far south, or the far west even, where we have the controversial Urumqis, where some of them are Muslims and all, and there's been like some border disputes and all. So when it comes to outside of China, they are actually having a culture shock and they're not used to it.
And culture shock, not just, as far as, I mean, I can be understanding if when they say culture shock means that they don't quite understand Western values. They get culture shock even in countries like Cambodia.
Wow.
Can you
Which
imagine
is pretty close.
Okay, so to them, the word trade union is quite foreign,
And among trade union, there are also things like independent courts or meddlesome journalists and a few other things that they
Labor law.
Labor laws, yeah.
Environmental law.
And
these are things that are like, we don't have that in China.
Exactly. Well, I mean, of course, the Chinese are known to how do I say this, that they are under a very autocratic government, where they are always being told what to do, and when it comes to being independent or even thinking about something, there's this general consensus that, oh, you're Chinese, so you just follow whatever that's been said. So I think that's where this whole thing about culture shock comes in as well.
And the weirdest part, this is really weird. This is according to one person from a Chinese company. He said that it is not a sign of strength, it is a sign of weakness to have all these different rules and regulation.
Wow. That's how they've been brainwashed.
Yeah, because to them, the more they can reap the profit of growth, the better it is. So, yeah.
Right. And in the last 2 years as well, a lot of things have changed in Cambodia. I mean, we know that even Cambodia does not really have very good labor laws and whatnot, but people have been starting to protest and starting to fight for their rights as well. And even the opposition party is growing. And this is something that the Chinese are also not used to. And if they are going to look at foreign companies going into China, I think that's equally difficult for them to adjust as well, because Chinese companies are now going through the same thing. Like you were mentioning earlier, a lot of these different terms, even regulatory environment they grew up in, is so different from the markets overseas.
And the only thing positive that they can comment on Cambodia, which is really not really positive actually, is this guy, a construction company manager, said that at least business culture in Cambodia is similar to China when it comes to bribing officials. Can you imagine that?
Good to know.
And they take money and they keep their promise. That's
Right.
the only thing that they want to know.
But also, I think as China economy slows down, they are also facing a lot of difficulties because they have to diversify and try to go out of the country and try to expand more, like you were saying earlier. But at the same time, that means that they need to also adapt to these new terms, learn new skills as well, and adapt to the new culture in order for them to be able to sustain themselves.
Yeah. And on the long run, it's good for ASEAN too, because we are eyeing to join the World Cup.
Of course.
Which is not related, but I'm trying to make it relatable.
Okay. I think the World Cup is a little tricky actually when we say that ASEAN will jointly host the World Cup. What that kind of gives me the imagination that one match will take place in Malaysia, the next match will take place in Singapore, and then
Maybe.
Indonesia.
You never know. And it's not so far in the future, although I cannot imagine how old we both will be in 2034.
2034.
How old will you be?
I don't know, like 40 something.
Oh, you'll be like a hot mom.
Yeah.
Watching
But
the World Cup.
Yeah, I will still be watching the World Cup for sure. But speaking about this, I think definitely ASEAN has a long way to go. I mean, most of our countries are not even in the World Cup yet, and that is something that we need to fix first, because there's no point hosting the World Cup and then it's all just European teams and there's no team from Southeast Asia. Maybe you'll have Japan or Korea, but those two are not in Southeast Asia as
Sorry
well.
for being really literal on it, but we suck.
We suck for now, but well, 2034 is still a long way to go, and in order for us to host it, we definitely need to start bucking up and trying to improve ourselves. I think that's also why we have all these preseason matches where we have big clubs like Liverpool and Barcelona coming down, although they don't always use their best players when they're playing against us because we are so defeatable. But hopefully that changes over the years and we do get some credibility to host the World Cup.
Yeah, and according to the ASEAN Football Federation head, he said that the ASEAN football could be an 18-team league and a concurrent, and they also will have a concurrent captain. I think the focus is now, just like what you said, to have as many competition, as many teams as possible, so you can somehow pick and choose the best. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And guess who suggested this whole idea of ASEAN hosting the World Cup?
Not our people, right?
It is actually our Youth and Sports Minister, Mr. Khairi Jamaluddin.
I'm not surprised. He has been on the forefront when it comes to trying to promote sports among the younger generation.
And he's a big football fan himself, so that kind of makes sense. So hopefully, there's already been a lot of criticism about other teams coming to play in Southeast Asia, but hopefully with the World Cup, it will be something new for us as well, a new challenge for us to push ourselves to improve by the time it's our turn to host the World Cup.
That would be amazing. Before we end the news, just to let you know, CNN has just opened its local branch in Indonesia. It's called Local CNN Channel Indonesia.
That's amazing. So Indonesians have their own CNN now.
I know, the Philippines has it. Now Indonesia has it. I don't think they want to open in Malaysia though.
Why not?
I don't know. I'm just speculating. But it's really great that CNN has finally opened their shop in Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest Muslim population, of course the largest Southeast Asian population as well, and definitely a lot of news can be covered by CNN by having their branch in Indonesia, and it will be in Indonesia language. So I think it will be great.
And especially in terms of improving the news and reporting quality as well in Indonesia.
And it's also followed by the previous launch, CNN the Philippines, which also was launched just recently. So it's great that they are focusing on the Philippines and Indonesia for Southeast Asia's listeners.
And hopefully they expand as well.
Anyway, that's all from us today, and you can always follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and listen to our podcast on YouTube.
That's right. And also we have our very own Durian ASEAN app if you want to listen to us on your mobile phone. And as always, for all the recent updates, you can just log on to www.durianasean.com.